The needle slipped through ivory silk like a whispered secret. Each stitch a prayer I'd been weaving for 6 months. French seams, hand-rolled hems, seed pearls I'd sewn one by one until my fingers bled and my eyes burned under the lamplight. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. At 62, my hands weren't as steady as they once were, but they were wiser. Each pleat held decades of muscle memory, every dart shaped by the ghosts of countless alterations I'd done to make ends meet after Robert died. This dress wasn't just fabric and thread. It was my love letter to my only daughter, Amanda Hughes, the child I'd raised alone after her father's heart attack when she was just 12. The morning sun painted golden squares across my kitchen floor as I wrapped the gown in acid-free tissue paper, the way my mother had taught me to preserve precious things. My reflection in the hallway mirror showed a woman grown thin from worry and lean from years of stretching every dollar. But my eyes held the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Today, Amanda would see what her mother's hands had created in the silence of countless nights. I hadn't always been just Donna Hughes, retired schoolteacher. Once, I'd dreamed of designing clothes professionally, back when Robert and I were young and full of plans. But life had other ideas. Teaching paid the bills, provided health insurance, offered stability for raising Amanda alone. My sewing became something I did in stolen moments, hemming pants for extra cash, making Amanda's prom dress when we couldn't afford store-bought, crafting costumes for school plays. You have the hands of an artist, Donna, Robert used to say, watching me work. I could still hear his voice sometimes, in the quiet moments between stitches. He would have been proud of this dress. Proud of the woman Amanda had become, successful, educated, engaged to a prominent businessman. Everything we'd sacrificed for. I traced my finger over the bodice where I'd sewn tiny seed pearls in a pattern that mimicked the stars on the night Robert proposed to me, a secret constellation that only I would recognize. The ivory silk charmeuse had cost me 3 weeks' grocery money, but worth every sacrifice for Amanda's wedding day. 6 months of evenings after grading papers before retirement. 6 months of saving every penny. 6 months of dreaming about the moment my daughter would slip into silk and lace made by her mother's hands. The dress spread across my dining table like captured moonlight, waiting to fulfill its purpose. I carefully lifted the dress into its garment bag, zipping it closed with a quiet prayer. Outside, Portland's spring air carried the scent of rhododendrons and possibility. I slipped behind the wheel of my 10-year-old Honda, setting the dress gently on the back seat like precious cargo. Today was the final fitting, 3 weeks before the wedding, the moment Amanda would see the finished creation. As I drove, memories flickered like an old film reel. Amanda at 5, wearing a Halloween princess costume I'd sewn from discount fabric and old curtains, twirling until she collapsed in giggles. Amanda at 16, reluctantly accepting the homemade prom dress when her friends had store-bought gowns. "It's beautiful, Mom," she'd said, but I'd seen the flicker of something else behind her eyes, the beginning of a distance I couldn't quite bridge. When had she started seeing my handmade gifts as signs of what we lacked rather than expressions of love? Perhaps when she'd met James Winters in graduate school, when she'd been introduced to a world of casual wealth and effortless privilege. When his mother, Eleanor, had begun subtly reshaping my daughter into someone who belonged in their world, not mine. I pushed the thought away. Today wasn't about Eleanor Winters. Today was about a mother's gift to her daughter. The Fairmont Hotel rose before me like a wedding cake made of brick and marble, its valet parking alone costing more than I spent on groceries in a month. Amanda had chosen this venue, or rather, Eleanor had chosen it. Despite knowing my modest teacher's pension couldn't stretch to such extravagance, I'd offered to help with the flowers instead, to do something within my means. But Eleanor had smiled that paper-thin smile of hers and said, "Oh, don't worry about contributing. Donna, we've got everything handled." I handed my keys to the valet with an apologetic smile. Embarrassed by my car's peeling paint among the gleaming luxury vehicles, the young man was kind enough to pretend not to notice. "Mrs. Hughes," he asked, reading from his clipboard. "For the Winters Hughes wedding party." "Yes, that's right. 16th floor, bridal suite B." He handed me a visitor's badge. "Congratulations on your daughter's wedding." I clutched my precious garment bag and entered the hotel's vast marble lobby, feeling underdressed in my simple navy dress and sensible shoes. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across polished floors. Well-dressed people moved with the easy confidence of those who belong in such spaces. The elevator attendant, actual human elevator attendants, not something I'd seen in decades, nodded politely as I entered. "Floor ma'am 16, please. The bridal suite." "Ah, another wedding day. Beautiful time." His eyes crinkled kindly. "You must be very proud." "I am," I said softly, clutching the garment bag tighter. When the elevator doors opened, I followed the discreet signs to Bridal Suite B. I could hear feminine voices and laughter before I even knocked. Excited chatter, the pop of a champagne cork, music playing from someone's phone. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door swung open to reveal a young woman with a professional camera. "You must be Amanda's mom. Come in, come in. We're just starting hair and makeup." The bridal suite hummed with expensive chaos. Eleanor commanded a team of professionals like a general positioning troops, a makeup artist with a kit that cost more than my monthly rent, a hairstylist whose scissors moved with surgical precision, and the photographer whose camera clicked constantly, capturing every manufactured moment of candid preparation. Amanda sat in the center of it all like a porcelain doll, beautiful and still, while strangers painted and prodded and fussed over her. My daughter had always been lovely, but today she looked like someone else entirely, someone polished to a shine that reflected back only what others wanted to see. "Mom." Amanda's voice carried that particular tone that meant she needed something, but was already preparing to be disappointed by what I could offer. "You're here? Good. We're almost ready for the dress." I lifted the garment bag with the reverence reserved for sacred things. 6 months of evenings after grading papers. 6 months of saving every penny. 6 months of dreaming about the moment my daughter would slip into silk and lace made by her mother's hands. "I brought the dress," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. Eleanor looked up from her orchestration of wedding perfection, her gaze settling on my garment bag like a judge weighing evidence. "Oh, the dress you made, how thoughtful." The word thoughtful fell from her lips like a diplomatic apology for something embarrassing but unavoidable. I began to unzip the bag, my fingers trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from the intensity of love that had gone into every stitch. The silk emerged like water taking shape, and for a moment, the room fell silent. Eleanor began, then stopped. "It's very handmade. The detail work is quite rustic," she finished, stepping closer with the air of someone examining damaged goods. Rustic. 6 months of French seams and hand-embroidered pearls dismissed as rustic. I felt something shift inside my chest, a small door closing. "Haley, darling," Eleanor continued, her voice honeyed with false kindness. "Perhaps we should consider the backup option we discussed, the Vera Wang from the boutique. It's more appropriate for the photographs." Amanda's eyes darted between the dress I'd made and the woman who would soon be her mother-in-law. I watched my daughter weigh her choices like a merchant calculating profit and loss, and I saw the exact moment she chose the path that led away from me. "Mom, I think maybe we should go with the other dress. This one is—" She paused, searching for words that wouldn't cut too deep. "It's just not quite right for the venue." The needle-sharp pain of rejection pierced through 23 years of scraped knees I'd bandaged, nightmares I'd chased away, and dreams I'd encouraged. I folded the dress back into its tissue paper shroud, my movements careful and precise, the way I'd learned to handle disappointment with dignity and tact. "Of course," I said. "Whatever makes you happy." I stepped into the hallway to give them privacy, but also to breathe. The corridor's thick carpet muffled the sounds of wedding preparation, but the door hadn't fully closed. I stood frozen, one hand still on the doorknob, when I heard Eleanor's voice carry clearly through the gap. "Thank God you came to your senses," she said with audible relief. "Can you imagine the photographs everyone would wonder where on earth that dress came from?" Amanda laughed, a bright, nervous sound that pierced straight through me. "If anyone asks, I'll just say it doesn't fit." It looks like something from a thrift store anyway, Eleanor added dismissively. The words hit like physical blows. 6 months. 6 months of my life. My love. My hope that I still mattered to the child I'd raised. 6 months reduced to thrift store embarrassment and nervous laughter. I stood in that hotel hallway, dress bag clutched against my chest, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not breaking implied something that could be mended. This was more like evolution, like a snake shedding skin it had outgrown. Through the partially open door, I could see Amanda stepping into the Vera Wang gown, her face radiant with relief. Eleanor zipped her up with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully prevented a social disaster. The photographer snapped away, capturing the moment of transformation from daughter to daughter-in-law, while my own creation lay forgotten on a chair like discarded wrapping paper. I walked back into the room with the measured steps of someone who had made a decision. I'm going to take this home, I said, lifting my dress with newfound purpose. Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. Maybe I can wear it to the rehearsal dinner. Amanda's voice carried the hollow ring of consolation prizes and afterthoughts. No, I said simply. That won't be necessary. I kissed my daughter's forehead, inhaling the scent of expensive hairspray and borrowed perfume that smelled nothing like the child who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Have a beautiful wedding, sweetheart. As I walked down the hotel corridor, I heard Eleanor say, Well, that was easier than I expected. Sometimes people just need to accept reality. The elevator doors closed on my old life. In my arms, wrapped in tissue paper and wounded pride, lay the beginning of something else entirely. Outside, the spring air carried the scent of possibility mixed with exhaust fumes and other people's dreams. I placed the dress carefully in my car's back seat, settling it like precious cargo for a journey to an unknown destination. The valet looked concerned when he saw my face. Everything okay, ma'am? I gave him a tip I couldn't afford and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Everything's exactly as it should be. The drive home took me past the neighborhood where I'd raised Amanda alone, past the school where I'd taught for 37 years, past all the familiar landmarks of a life lived in service to others. But today, those places looked different. Smaller somehow, as if I'd been seeing them through the wrong lens all this time. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I hadn't cried yet. The pain was too deep for tears, settling instead into a strange, hollow clarity I'd never experienced before. For 23 years after Robert died, every decision I'd made had been filtered through one question. What's best for Amanda? I'd put aside my own dreams, worked extra jobs, lived in a modest house in a decent school district instead of the downtown loft I'd secretly coveted. I'd chosen stability over passion, security over adventure, all to give my daughter the foundation she needed. And now she was marrying into a family that saw me, and by extension, everything I'd sacrificed to give her as something embarrassing to be hidden away. Something rustic, something from a thrift store. My house welcomed me back with its familiar creaks and shadows. The same yellow kitchen walls I'd painted when Amanda started high school. The same photographs chronicling a lifetime of birthdays, graduations, and ordinary Tuesdays that had somehow added up to raising a human being. I spread the dress across my dining room table once more, smoothing the silk with gentle hands. The afternoon light caught the pearls I'd sewn in spiraling patterns across the bodice, each one placed with the precision of a woman who understood that details mattered, especially when no one else noticed. The French seams lay flat and perfect, invisible from the outside but strong enough to last generations. This was not thrift store work. This was artistry born of love and honed by necessity. I made myself a cup of tea English breakfast, strong enough to wake the dead, and sat looking at the dress while steam rose from my mug like incense. Somewhere across town, Amanda was walking down an aisle in borrowed elegance. But here in my quiet house, surrounded by the tools of my craft, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the stirring of my own ambition. The phone rang once during my vigil, probably Amanda calling from her honeymoon suite, voice bright with champagne and guilt, ready to explain and apologize and make everything smooth again. I let it ring. 3 days passed in merciful silence. No calls from the honeymoon. No flowers with apologetic cards. No visits from well-meaning neighbors who'd heard whispers about wedding day drama. Just me, the dress, and the growing certainty that something fundamental had shifted in the architecture of my life. I found myself studying the gown with new eyes, seeing it not as rejected love, but as evidence of skill I'd forgotten I possessed. The hand-rolled hem alone represented 40 hours of work that would cost $800 at any decent bridal boutique. The bodice construction princess seams with French curves was couture-level tailoring. My mother's voice echoed from memory. "Donna, you have the hands of an artist. Don't waste them on other people's dreams." On Thursday morning, I was photographing the dress from different angles, documenting my work like a crime scene investigator, when the doorbell chimed. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman with dark curls escaping from a messy bun, holding what appeared to be a casserole dish and wearing the kind of determined expression that meant she wouldn't leave easily. "Mrs. Hughes," her voice carried a slight accent I couldn't place. "I'm Maya Rodriguez. I live in the apartment above the bakery on Maple Street. I heard you might need some company." Maya. The name conjured a vague memory of Amanda mentioning her years ago, a girl who'd worked at the coffee shop where Amanda studied for her master's degree. They'd been friends, or friendly at least, before Amanda's social circle narrowed to include only people who could advance James's career. I opened the door to find a woman of perhaps 28 with paint-stained fingers and the kind of authentic smile that had become foreign to me. She held out the casserole dish like an offering. "Chicken enchiladas," she said. "My grandmother's recipe." "I figured you might not be cooking much this week." "How did you—" "Amanda called me," Maya said simply. 3 nights ago, crying, drunk, from her hotel room in Cabo. She told me what happened, what she said about the dress. Her dark eyes flashed with indignation. I wanted to drive over there and slap some sense into her, but Mexico is a little far for an intervention. Despite myself, I almost smiled. "Come in. I was just making coffee." Maya stepped into my foyer and stopped dead, her gaze fixed on the dress displayed across my dining room. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, then clapped her hand over her mouth. "Sorry, I mean, holy, is that the dress? That's the dress?" She approached it like a pilgrim approaching a shrine, her fingers hovering inches above the silk. "Mrs. Hughes, this is museum-quality work. The beadwork alone. How long did this take you?" 6 months. 6 months. She turned to face me, her expression shifting from admiration to fury. 6 months of your life. And she called it thrift store quality in front of that ice queen mother-in-law. I found myself nodding, surprised by the relief of having anyone acknowledge the enormity of the betrayal. "You know what this reminds me of?" Maya continued, circling the dress like an art critic studying a masterpiece. "That wedding dress Joy Cavuto wore, the construction, the attention to detail. This isn't just a dress, it's couture. You know about construction techniques?" Maya's cheeks flushed slightly. "I went to fashion school for about a year before my dad got sick, and I had to come home to help with the restaurant. I've been waitressing and doing alterations on the side ever since, but—" She gestured toward the dress. "I've never seen anything like this outside of a museum." Something stirred in my chest, a feeling I'd almost forgotten. Recognition. Professional respect. The acknowledgement of skill by someone who understood the craft. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked. We sat in my kitchen, Maya's enthusiasm filling the space like sunlight through winter windows. She asked detailed questions about my techniques, admired photographs of other pieces I'd made over the years, and listened with genuine interest as I explained the difference between French seams and flat fell seams, the art of setting in sleeves without puckers, the patience required for hand-sewn buttonholes. "You know," she said, cradling her coffee mug, "my cousin Sophia is getting married in 3 months. Her budget is basically non-existent. She's a social worker. Her fiancé teaches kindergarten, and she's been crying about it for weeks. She can't afford anything decent, and she's too proud to ask for family money." "That's difficult," I murmured, though something in her tone suggested this conversation was heading somewhere specific. "She's about Amanda's size," Maya continued casually. "Maybe a little taller, but not by much." The implication hung between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. I looked through the archway at the dress, remembering the weight of it in my arms as I had carried it away from Amanda's wedding suite. Silk that had never felt the joy it was created for. "You think she'd want to wear a rejected dress?" I asked. "I think she'd cry with gratitude to wear a dress that beautiful," Maya said firmly. "Sophia's been looking at polyester disasters online for under 200. She gestured toward the dining room. This would make her feel like a queen." That afternoon, Maya brought Sophia to see the dress. My kitchen filled with the scent of fresh coffee and possibility as we waited for her arrival. Maya had called ahead, explaining only that she'd found a potential wedding dress that Sophia needed to see in person. "I didn't tell her where it came from," Maya admitted. "I wanted her to see it with fresh eyes." The doorbell rang at precisely 2:00. Sophia stood on my porch, her practical ponytail and minimal makeup suggesting someone who didn't have time for vanity. She wore scrubs beneath her jacket coming straight from her shift at the children's hospital. Maya had explained. "Aunt Donna," Maya said with a wink. "This is my cousin Sophia Garcia." "It's so nice to meet you," Sophia said, extending her hand with a warm smile that transformed her tired face. "Maya's been very mysterious about this whole thing." "Come in," I said. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be amazing. I've been on my feet since 5 this morning." I led them into the kitchen, purposely taking the route that avoided the dining room where the dress waited. We chatted about Sophia's work with foster children, her fiancé's kindergarten class, and their plans for a small backyard wedding at her parents' house. "We're keeping it simple," she explained, cupping her coffee mug in both hands. "No fancy venue, homemade food, a friend is DJing. But I've been struggling with the dress situation. Everything in my price range looks..." "Like it's in your price range," Maya supplied. Sophia laughed. "Exactly. And I know it's silly to care so much about a dress I'll wear once, but..." "It's not silly," I interrupted gently. "Your wedding day is important. How you feel that day is important." She looked at me gratefully. "Thank you for understanding. My fiancé thinks I should just order something online, but I keep thinking about walking down the aisle feeling like I'm wearing a Halloween costume." "I might have a solution," Maya said, exchanging a glance with me. "Aunt Donna is actually an incredible seamstress, and she has something to show you." I led Sophia into the dining room where the dress was displayed. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, making the ivory silk glow and the pearls shimmer like morning dew. Sophia stopped breathing. Her hand went to her throat, and for a moment, she just stared. "This is..." she finally whispered. "Did you really make this?" "I did." I nodded. "For my daughter's wedding." A shadow crossed her face as understanding dawned. "She didn't wear it. No, she chose something else." Sophia reached out to touch the silk, then pulled her hand back as if afraid she might damage something precious. "I can't. This is too beautiful, too expensive. It belongs in a wedding that costs $50,000, not a backyard barbecue with folding chairs." "Sophia," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "This dress was made with love. It was meant to celebrate a marriage, to make someone feel beautiful on the most important day of their life. That someone could be you," Maya nudged her cousin. "Try it on. Try it on," I echoed. 20 minutes later, Sophia stood in my bedroom mirror transformed. The dress fit her like it had been made for her body, the silk flowing over her curves with liquid grace. The ivory tone warmed her olive skin, and the hand-sewn pearls caught the light like stars. Sophia's voice cracked. "I look like a real bride." "You look like yourself," I said. "Just elevated." Maya pulled out her phone. "Hold still. I need to document this miracle." The photo she took captured something magical, Sophia's radiant smile, the perfect drape of silk, the way confidence had transformed her posture. In that image, she looked like exactly what she was, a woman in love, wearing a dress made by someone who understood that love should be celebrated, not dismissed. "I don't know how to thank you," Sophia said, tears making her mascara run slightly. "Wear it with joy," I told her. "That's thanks enough." But Maya had other ideas. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying that tone of someone about to suggest either brilliance or disaster, I think we should post this photo. Sophia looks incredible, and people should see what kind of work you do. Maya, I warned, but she was already typing on her phone. Just on my Instagram, I have like 300 followers, mostly other restaurant people and art students. What's the harm? She posted the photo with a caption that made my chest tight with unexpected pride. When your cousin needs a wedding dress but can't afford couture, and your friend's mom happens to be a secret master seamstress. This gown was hand-sewn over 6 months by Donna Hughes, a retired teacher who clearly missed her calling. Sophia is glowing, and this dress is proof that real artistry exists in the most unexpected places. #handmade couture, #real artist, #wedding dress, #talented women. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, Maya's phone was buzzing constantly with comments, shares, and direct messages. People wanted to know where they could commission similar work. Brides whose weddings were still months away started asking about pricing. Local seamstresses reached out with professional admiration. By evening, the photo had been shared 47 times. By the next morning, it had reached 2,000 views, and Maya was fielding inquiries from as far away as Portland and San Francisco. "Mrs. Hughes," Maya said, arriving at my door with coffee and croissants and an expression of barely contained excitement. "I think we need to talk about starting a business." I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through comment after comment of praise and inquiries, feeling like someone had switched on lights in rooms I'd forgotten existed. For decades, I'd sewn for necessity mending clothes, hemming curtains, making Halloween costumes on a teacher's salary. But this felt different. This felt like possibility. "I don't know anything about running a business," I said. "But you know everything about making dresses that make women feel like goddesses," Maya countered. "That's the hard part. The business stuff we can learn." Through my dining room window, I could see Mrs. Patterson walking her dog the same route she'd taken every day for the 15 years I'd lived in this house. Same time, same pace, same predictable orbit around the neighborhood. 3 days ago, I'd been following my own predictable orbit. Retired teacher, discarded mother, woman whose best years were assumed to be behind her. Now, Sophia's photo smiled back at me from Maya's phone screen, and strangers were asking to pay me for the skills I'd almost let die in silence. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked. Maya's grin could have powered the entire block. "I'm suggesting that maybe a retired teacher and a former fashion student might know something about what real women actually want to wear. I'm suggesting that maybe commercially viable has made fashion boring and soulless, and maybe there's room for something different." The silence stretched between us, full of possibility and terror in equal measure. "We'd need capital," Maya said finally. "Equipment, space, materials, a real business license, marketing beyond Instagram posts. I have some savings," I said. "And this house, I could take out a home equity loan. Donna, that's your security, your safety net." "No," I said, turning from the window to face her. Amanda was my safety net. My teaching pension was my security. This house was my retreat from the world. But none of those things actually made me safe. Did they? Amanda threw away 6 months of my love without a second thought. My pension barely covers my bills. And this house has been a beautiful prison where I've been slowly disappearing. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if looking for signs of temporary insanity or permanent resolve. "What would we call it?" she asked finally. "The business. What would we name a custom clothing company started by a retired teacher and a runaway fashion student in suburban Portland?" I thought about Sophia's face in the mirror, about the joy of creating something beautiful for someone who truly appreciated it, about Amanda's nervous laughter and Eleanor's dismissive smile, and the years I'd spent making myself smaller to fit other people's expectations. "Threadwork," I said. "Custom clothing by women who understand that every body tells a story worth honoring." Maya's grin started slow and built like sunrise. "Threadwork. I like it." She pulled out her phone. "I'm Googling business license requirements." "Maya, wait, are we really doing this?" She looked up from her screen, her expression shifting from excitement to something deeper and more serious. "Donna, 3 weeks ago, you were a retired teacher whose daughter treated you like an embarrassing obligation. Today, You're a sought-after artist with a waiting list of clients and a TV interview scheduled for Friday. Tomorrow, she shrugged. Tomorrow we change the fashion industry. One custom dress at a time. The next morning, I woke before dawn and padded to my studio where Sophia's dress hung on the dress form like a promise kept. In the soft light, I could see every stitch, every bead, every choice I'd made in the service of creating something beautiful. This dress would never hang forgotten in a closet or be dismissed as thrift store quality. It would be worn by a woman who understood its value, photographed by people who recognized artistry when they saw it, and remembered as the beginning of something extraordinary. 3 weeks after the wedding incident, I was sitting at my dining table now converted into a makeshift cutting station when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Maya was at her waitressing job until 4, and we weren't meeting with potential clients until tomorrow. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, tall, elegant, silver-haired, wearing a pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. I opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Hughes, I'm Betty Reynolds from Channel 7 News." She extended a business card. "I saw the photograph of the wedding dress you made, and I'd like to do a feature story about local artisans. Would you be interested in an interview?" My hand trembled as I took the card. "I'm sorry. What? The wedding dress photo has been shared over 15,000 times in the past week. People are calling you the hidden couture artist of suburban Portland. We'd love to tell your story." 15,000 times. The number felt surreal, impossible. I thought of nervous laughter echoing in that hotel suite. It looks like something from a thrift store, and felt a satisfaction so sharp it could have cut silk. I'd need to think about it. Of course. But Mrs. Hughes, I saw the dress in person yesterday. Sophia Garcia is my hairstylist's niece, and she showed me the gown. It's museum quality. People should know about work like that. After Betty left, I sat in the silence of my transformed house. In 3 weeks, I'd taken 7 commissions. Maya had helped me set up a basic website, calculate pricing that reflected both my skill and my need to eat, and navigate the strange world of social media where strangers complimented my French seams and begged for appointment availability. The phone rang, displaying a number I knew all too well. "Mom!" Amanda's voice hit me like cold water. We hadn't spoken since the wedding, though I'd heard through family channels that the honeymoon had been perfect and that she and James were settling into married life beautifully. "Hello, Amanda? Mom, Her voice carried that particular breathlessness that meant she was about to ask for something while pretending to offer it. "I heard about the news interview and all the attention you're getting for sewing. I think it's wonderful. Do you?" "Of course. I always knew you were talented. And I was thinking maybe we could meet for lunch. I have some ideas about how to help you expand this little business." This little business. The phrase landed like a paper cut, small but surprisingly painful. "I'm quite busy these days. Amanda?" "Oh, I know. That's why I thought we could discuss efficiency strategies. Maybe you could streamline your process. Use different materials that are more cost-effective. James has some insights about scaling artisan businesses. He deals with creative entrepreneurs all the time in his consulting work." I closed my eyes, seeing with perfect clarity the conversation Amanda had already had with her husband and mother-in-law. Donna's little sewing hobby was getting attention, which meant it could be useful, but only if properly managed and refined according to their standards. "What kind of materials did you have in mind?" I asked. "Well, nothing too expensive, maybe synthetic blends instead of silk, and we could source beading wholesale instead of you hand-sewing everything. James says the key to profitability is reducing labor-intensive processes." Synthetic blends. Don't sound like that. Mom, I'm trying to help. The dress you made for Sophia looked lovely, but let's be honest. You can't spend 6 months on every dress if you want to make real money. Real money as opposed to the imaginary money I was apparently making by charging fair prices for master-level craftsmanship. "Amanda," I said carefully, "did you see the news story announcement? That's actually why I called. I think it's wonderful exposure, but you'll want to be careful about how you present yourself. Maybe I could help you prepare for the interview. Make sure you say the right things. The right things as if my own words describing my own work might not be adequate without her editorial guidance." "I'll call you back," I said, and hung up before she could respond. Maya arrived an hour later with Thai takeout and the expression of someone who'd been fielding phone calls all day. "Your daughter called me," she announced, setting containers of pad Thai on my kitchen table. "Wanted to know if I was encouraging you in this sewing venture and whether I understood the financial realities of custom work." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that in 3 weeks you've made more money per hour than I make waitressing, and that your financial realities include having a waiting list of clients willing to pay premium prices for work they can't get anywhere else." Maya's eyes flashed. "Then I may have mentioned that dismissing museum-quality craftsmanship as a sewing venture showed a fundamental misunderstanding of both art and business." I found myself smiling for the first time all day. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. She suggested I might be getting above myself, and that it would be unfortunate if I encouraged you to make unrealistic career decisions at your age. At my age, at 62 years old, apparently too ancient for new dreams. "Maya," I said suddenly, "do you remember what you wanted to do when you were in fashion school before your father got sick?" Her face shifted, vulnerability replacing the fierce protectiveness she'd been wearing. "I wanted to design clothes for real women, not size 0 models or celebrities, but women with curves and stories and lives that didn't fit standard patterns." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Naive, right? The professors kept pushing us toward commercially viable designs. Clothes that could be mass-produced and marketed to the broadest possible demographic. What if it wasn't naive?" "What do you mean?" I stood up, pacing to the window, where I could see my neighbor's predictable garden, the same flowers planted in the same patterns year after year, safe and unremarkable, and slowly dying from lack of imagination. What if we didn't just take commissions for wedding dresses? What if we actually started a real business? Custom clothing for women who've been ignored by the fashion industry. Maya set down her fork. "Donna, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe a retired teacher and a former fashion student might know something about what real women actually want to wear. I'm suggesting that maybe commercially viable has made fashion boring and soulless, and maybe there's room for something different." The silence stretched between us, full of possibility and terror in equal measure. "We'd need capital," Maya said finally. "Equipment, space, materials, a real business license, marketing beyond Instagram posts. I have some savings," I said. "And this house, I could take out a home equity loan." "Donna, that's your security, your safety net." "No," I said, turning from the window to face her. "Amanda was my safety net. My teaching pension was my security. This house was my retreat from the world. But none of those things actually made me safe. Did they?" Amanda threw away 6 months of my love without a second thought. "My pension barely covers my bills, and this house has been a beautiful prison where I've been slowly disappearing." Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if looking for signs of temporary insanity or permanent resolve. "What would we call it?" she asked finally. "The business, I mean, what would we name a custom clothing company started by a retired teacher and a runaway fashion student in suburban Portland?" I thought about Sophia's face in the mirror, about the joy of creating something beautiful for someone who truly appreciated it, about Amanda's nervous laughter and Eleanor's dismissive smile, and the years I'd spent making myself smaller to fit other people's expectations. "Threadwork," I said. "Custom clothing by women who understand that every body tells a story worth honoring." Sophia's wedding was 3 weeks away when the interview with Betty Reynolds aired. Maya and I watched it together in my living room, clutching coffee mugs in each other's hands as my face appeared on screen. "Portland has a hidden treasure," Betty's voice narrated over footage of me working on a dress. "Donna Hughes spent 37 years teaching high school English, but her true gift may be the art she creates with needle and thread." The camera panned over the details of several dresses I'd made, lingering on the beadwork and French seams. "I've always sewn," my on-screen self explained with more confidence than I'd felt during the interview. "It was a necessity that became a passion. Every woman deserves to wear something that makes her feel seen and celebrated exactly as she is." Betty's voice continued. "Hughes's journey to recognition began with heartbreak, a wedding dress she spent 6 months creating for her daughter, only to have it rejected. Maya squeezed my hand as photos of the original dress appeared on screen. But that rejection became the catalyst for a new chapter in Donna's life. When the dress found its way to bride-to-be Sofia Garcia, the footage cut to Sofia, radiant in my creation. When I put on this dress, I saw myself as beautiful for the first time in my life, she said, tears glistening, not because the dress changed me, but because it honored who I already was. The segment ended with information about Threadwork, our newly established custom clothing business, and noted that we already had a 3-month waiting list for consultations. Maya whooped and threw her arms around me when it ended. "We're going to need a bigger studio." My phone began ringing immediately. First was Mrs. Abernathy, a 70-year-old widow from my neighborhood who wanted a dress for her grandson's wedding. "I've been shopping at department stores for months," she explained when she arrived for her consultation the next day. "Everything is either too young, too tight, or too matronly. I don't want to look like mutton dressed as lamb, but I also don't want to look like I'm attending a funeral." I sketched as she spoke, envisioning a dress that would honor her elegance without trying to hide her age. "What about something like this?" I showed her a design for a deep forest green crepe dress with 3/4 sleeves and a subtle A-line silhouette. The color would complement your eyes, and we could add delicate beadwork at the neckline enough to catch the light without screaming for attention. Mrs. Abernathy studied the sketch, then looked up at me with eyes bright with emotion. "My daughter-in-law suggested I just buy something online, said it would be cheaper and more practical. And what do you think? I think I want to feel beautiful at my grandson's wedding. I think I want to wear something made by someone who sees me, not just my age." As Mrs. Abernathy left with her measurements taken and a deposit paid, Maya bounded in with a real estate listing on her phone. "I found a space," she announced breathlessly. "A storefront downtown with big windows and enough room for multiple sewing stations. The rent is steep, but if we combine your home equity loan with my savings, we could make it work for at least a year." I studied the photos of the bright corner space with its tall windows and hardwood floors. It was a far cry from my dining room table, and the financial commitment made my stomach clench with anxiety. "What if it doesn't work?" I asked quietly. "What if we invest everything and fail?" Maya sat beside me, her youth and energy softening into something more thoughtful. "Then we fail knowing we tried something extraordinary. But Donna, I don't think we're going to fail. I think we're going to change how women see themselves, one dress at a time." 2 days later, we signed the lease on the downtown storefront, a commitment that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. We spent a week painting, setting up workstations, and transforming the space into the physical manifestation of our vision. Maya designed a logo, a needle and thread forming a subtle heart shape, and had it painted in gold leaf on the front window, beneath the word Threadwork, in elegant script. The night before our official opening, we stood in the center of the empty shop, surrounded by dress forms, bolts of fabric, and possibilities. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Maya asked. "No," I admitted, "but I'm ready to be unready, if that makes sense." She laughed. "It makes perfect sense. That's exactly how I felt leaving for fashion school." The phone in my pocket vibrated a text from Amanda. "Saw the store on my way home from work. Looks expensive. Hope you know what you're doing." I put the phone away without responding, refusing to let her doubt cloud this moment. "Let's go home," I said to Maya. Tomorrow, we changed the world. Sophia's wedding arrived on a perfect June day, sunlight filtering through the oak trees in her parents' backyard. Maya and I arrived early to help her dress, bringing with us a small bag of emergency supplies, extra thread in the dress's exact shade, a few spare pearls, fashion tape, and a mother's wisdom about breathing through pre-wedding jitters. "I'm so nervous," Sophia confessed as we helped her into the gown in her childhood bedroom. "What if I trip? What if I cry and ruin my makeup? What if you remember that you're marrying the love of your life, and everything else is just details?" I suggested, securing the last button. She took a deep breath and turned to the mirror. The dress caught the light exactly as I'd designed it to, the pearls creating a constellation of tiny stars across her bodice and train. "You look perfect," Maya whispered, adjusting the veil. "Not perfect," I corrected gently. "Authentically Sophia. That's better than perfect." We watched from the second row as Sophia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, the dress moving like water around her. Her fiancé's face when he saw her was everything a bride could hope for: wonder, joy, and absolute certainty. During the reception, amid twinkling lights and the laughter of 100 people celebrating love, an elderly woman approached our table. "Are you the ones who made Sophia's dress?" she asked, leaning heavily on a cane. "I designed and sewed it," I acknowledged. Maya helped with the final fittings. "It's the most beautiful wedding dress I've ever seen, and I'm 86 years old, so I've seen plenty," she smiled, revealing a lifetime of laugh lines. "I don't suppose you make mother of the bride dresses. My other granddaughter is getting married in September, and I refuse to wear those awful beige sacks they try to sell us old ladies." Maya handed her a business card with our new logo. "We specialize in making women of all ages look and feel beautiful. We'd be honored to create something for you." As the woman walked away, Maya nudged me. "Our first mother of the bride client." "Grandmother of the bride," I corrected with a smile. "Either way, Threadwork is officially in business." The next morning, as Maya and I opened our shop for its first full day of operation, 6 women were already waiting outside. 4 had seen the Channel 7 segment. 1 was Sophia's great-aunt, and 1 had driven from Seattle after seeing the viral Instagram photo. "Ladies," Maya said, unlocking the door with a flourish, "welcome to Threadwork, where every body tells a story worth honoring." The days blurred into weeks as Threadwork found its rhythm. Maya managed the business side with surprising acumen, handling everything from accounting to social media with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years balancing multiple jobs. I focused on what I did best, listening to women's stories and translating them into clothing that celebrated rather than concealed. Mrs. Abernathy's forest green dress was our first completed commission, finished just in time for her grandson's wedding. When she emerged from the fitting room for the final adjustment, she stood before the 3-way mirror for a long moment without speaking. "Mrs. Hughes," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "I look like myself, but the best version of myself. That's the goal," I said, adjusting the hem slightly. "To honor who you are, not hide it." Word spread quickly. Women began coming to Threadwork not just for special occasion dresses, but for everyday clothing that actually fit their bodies. We expanded our offerings to include tailored suits for women who'd never found one that accommodated both their shoulders and their hips, blouses that didn't gap or pull across the bust, pants with real pockets. Each garment came with a story. Catherine, a 45-year-old attorney, came to us after a double mastectomy, needing a court-appropriate wardrobe that fit her changed body. "I don't want to look like I'm hiding," she explained during her consultation. "But I also don't want my reconstruction to be the first thing people notice." I designed suits with subtle dart placement that created balance without emphasizing or concealing. When Catherine tried on the first completed jacket, her eyes filled with tears. "For the first time since my surgery, I feel like I'm wearing something designed for me, not despite me." Maya captured the moment with Catherine's permission for our rapidly growing Instagram account. The photo showed Catherine in profile, her professional silhouette strong and confident, with the caption, "At Threadwork, we believe scars are stories, not flaws. Custom clothing for women whose bodies have journeyed through life's challenges." The post received over 20,000 likes in 2 days and brought a flood of inquiries from women who'd had mastectomies, hysterectomies, C-sections, and other surgeries that had changed their relationships with their bodies and their clothes. "We need to hire help," Maya announced 6 weeks after our opening, looking at our burgeoning appointment book. "We're booked solid through Christmas, and you're working 16-hour days." She was right. I'd been waking at dawn to cut patterns and staying until midnight to finish seams. The work energized me, but even passion couldn't prevent physical exhaustion. "What kind of help did you have in mind?" "I'm thinking 2 experienced seamstresses who can handle basic construction and alterations, freeing you up to focus on design and the most complex elements. I know just the women, Maria and Judith. They worked at the garment factory that closed last year and have been struggling to find work since. They're both over 50 and have decades of experience." I thought of the skills that might be lost if these women couldn't use them, the same way my own talents had nearly vanished into the rhythm of everyday survival. Bring them in, I decided. Let's see if they're a good fit for thread work. Maria and Judith arrived the next morning, both carrying portfolios of their work and the wary hope of women who'd been told their skills were obsolete in a world of fast fashion and overseas manufacturing. I've been sewing since I was 12, Maria explained, showing me samples of her precise top stitching. My grandmother taught me in Mexico before we moved to Portland. I worked at the factory for 22 years before they shipped our jobs to Bangladesh. Judith, tall and angular with silver-streaked hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, had specialized in tailoring men's suits. I can set a sleeve so perfectly you'd think it grew there, she said without false modesty. But nobody seems to care about that kind of quality anymore. We care, Maya said firmly. At Threadwork, craftsmanship isn't a luxury. It's our foundation. I hired them both on the spot, offering salaries that reflected the value of their skills rather than what the market claimed they were worth. Their expertise allowed us to increase production without sacrificing quality, and their perspectives enriched our designs. The shop hummed with conversation in English and Spanish, with the whir of sewing machines and the laughter of women who'd found a place where their age was an asset rather than a liability. Clients often lingered after fittings, sharing stories and admiring works in progress. You know what I love most about this place? Asked Catherine, now a regular client, as she tried on a blouse I'd designed to complement her favorite suit. Nobody here acts like my body is wrong for existing. 8 weeks after our grand opening, as Threadwork settled into a successful rhythm, Maya burst into the studio with her laptop open and her eyes wide with excitement. Donna, you need to see this. She set the computer on my cutting table, navigating to a popular fashion blog. Someone wrote about us. The headline read, Threadwork, the Couture Revolution, starting in Portland. The article praised our commitment to custom clothing for real women's bodies, highlighted our employment of older seamstresses, and most surprisingly held up my rejected wedding dress as a symbol of the fashion industry's failure to recognize true artistry outside traditional channels. This is going to explode, Maya predicted, scrolling through the comments section already filling with enthusiastic responses. We're about to become more than a local phenomenon. She was right. By the following week, we'd received inquiries from women in 12 states, asking if we would consider shipping or traveling for fittings. A fashion magazine wanted to feature us in their Innovators section. A documentary filmmaker contacted us about possibly following Threadwork for a year to capture our disruption of the fashion status quo. In the midst of this whirlwind, I received a text from Amanda. Mom, we need to talk. This business thing is getting out of hand. James and I are worried about you. I showed the message to Maya, who rolled her eyes. Translation, Mom, we're worried you might actually be successful without our management and guidance. She's still my daughter, I said quietly. Maya's expression softened. I know, and she's still the person who called your masterpiece thrift store quality. Just be careful with your heart. Okay. I nodded, though I wasn't sure my heart was what needed protection anymore. In the 2 months since opening Threadwork, I'd discovered something stronger within myself than I'd known existed, a core of creative certainty that even Amanda's disapproval couldn't shake. I texted back, I'm quite busy with the business. Perhaps we could meet for coffee next week. Her response came immediately. How about lunch tomorrow? James wants to join us. He has some concerns about your financial exposure with this venture. I stared at the phone, feeling the familiar pull of maternal accommodation warring with my newfound resolve. For 23 years, I'd prioritized Amanda's needs, often at the expense of my own. It would be easy to fall back into that pattern, to nod politely as James explained how I should run my business, to let them reshape Threadwork into something sensible and age-appropriate. Instead, I typed, I'm afraid tomorrow doesn't work with my schedule. The business is doing extremely well, both financially and creatively. I appreciate your concern, but I'm quite capable of managing my own venture. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then put the phone away and returned to the emerald green silk I was cutting for a woman who'd never owned a dress that truly fit her body, a retired surgeon who'd spent her career in ill-fitting scrubs and boxy suits, and who wanted just once to feel beautiful at her daughter's graduation. Success brought its own complications. Our rapid growth meant constant decisions about everything from fabric suppliers to pricing structures to whether we should develop a ready-to-wear line alongside our custom pieces. Maya and I worked late most nights, hunched over spreadsheets and design plans, trying to balance creative integrity with financial sustainability. If we hired 2 more seamstresses, we could increase production by 30%. Maya calculated, tapping her pencil against the accounting books. But that means higher overhead, which means more pressure to take on additional clients. And if we take on too many clients too quickly, quality could suffer, I added, rubbing my tired eyes. We're not making fast fashion here. No, but we also can't remain a tiny boutique forever if we want to truly change how women experience clothing. Maya looked up at me, her expression serious. We need to decide what Threadwork is going to be. Donna, a small exclusive atelier serving a limited clientele, or something bigger that reaches more women. It was a question that kept me awake at night. Each path had its appeal and its drawbacks. Staying small meant maintaining absolute control over quality and the personal connection with clients that made Threadwork special. Growing meant the possibility of bringing our vision to more women, creating more jobs for skilled seamstresses, and perhaps even changing the broader conversation about fashion and bodies. What if we found a middle path, I suggested. We maintain the custom atelier as our core, but develop a small collection of signature pieces that could be made in limited quantities and standard sizes, then tailored to individual clients. That way, women who can't afford fully custom work could still experience Threadwork quality. Maya's eyes lit up. Donna Hughes, you're a genius. That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. She scribbled notes excitedly. We could start with the pieces clients request, most often the wrap dress with the adjustable waist, the blazer with the perfect sleeve cap, the wide-leg trousers with actual functional pockets. Our discussion was interrupted by a sharp knock on the shop's front door. We'd closed hours ago, and the closed sign was clearly visible. Maya peered through the blinds. It's your daughter, she said quietly. And a man I'm guessing is James. My stomach tightened. Let them in. Amanda looked out of place in our colorful, creative space, her corporate attire and carefully neutral expression at odds with the vibrant fabrics and half-finished garments surrounding her. James, tall and expensively groomed, surveyed the shop with the calculating gaze of someone assessing property values. Mom, Amanda nodded stiffly. We were in the neighborhood and saw the lights on. I thought it was time we saw this operation in person. Threadwork, I corrected gently. The business is called Threadwork. Interesting space, James commented, running his hand along a bolt of silk dupioni. The rent must be considerable in this area. We're doing quite well, Maya interjected, her smile professional but cool. Our overhead is covered through next year, and we're projecting significant growth. James raised an eyebrow. And you are Maya Rodriguez, co-founder and business manager of Threadwork. Donna and I are partners. Partners? Amanda's voice rose slightly. Mom, you didn't mention you'd taken on a legal partner. Did you have a lawyer review the agreement? What's the equity distribution? What happens if I die? I finished bluntly. Is that what you're worried about? Amanda, who gets my share of Threadwork when I'm gone? Her cheeks flushed. That's not what I meant. I'm concerned about you jumping into a business arrangement without proper advisement. Mom, you're a retired English teacher. You don't know the first thing about running a company. I knew enough to build one that's already profitable, I replied evenly. And Maya and I sought plenty of professional advice before formalizing our partnership. We have a lawyer, an accountant, and a business plan that's been reviewed by the Small Business Administration. James cleared his throat. Donna, while this little boutique is charming, Amanda and I are concerned about the sustainability. The fashion industry is notoriously volatile, and at your age, taking on this level of risk seems unwise. At my age, I repeated, the phrase landing like a familiar slap. Tell me, James, at what age should a person stop pursuing their passion? At what point do we become too old for joy, for creativity, for building something meaningful? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I moved to my cutting table, running my fingers over the emerald silk. You look at me and see a woman past her prime, clinging to a hobby that's gotten out of hand. But I'm not playing at business. James, I'm creating art that changes how women see themselves. And I'm making more money doing it than I ever did in 37 years of teaching. Amanda's expression shifted from concern to something harder. So this is about money, about proving something. No, sweetheart. It's about finally recognizing my own value after decades of letting others define it for me. I looked directly at my daughter, seeing in her face echoes of the little girl who'd once thought I hung the moon. It's about learning that rejection can sometimes be the greatest gift, if it leads you to where you truly belong. Mom, Maya stepped forward. I think we should continue this conversation another time. We have an early client consultation tomorrow, and we need to finish our planning. James put his hand on Amanda's arm. She's right. We've made our concerns clear. Your mother is an adult who can make her own decisions, even if we disagree with them. The tension in the room was palpable as they prepared to leave. At the door, Amanda turned back. The news wants to interview you again. Something about redefining fashion after 60. They called James's office trying to reach you. Why would they call James's office? Because I told them I was handling your media inquiries. She had the decency to look embarrassed. I thought you might need help managing the attention. I felt a flare of anger, but tamped it down. I appreciate the thought, Amanda, but I don't need management. I need respect. Respect for my choices, my abilities, and my partnership with Maya. After they left, Maya and I sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the confrontation settling around us. Are you okay? She finally asked. No, I admitted. But I will be, for the first time in my life. I'm standing up for my own dreams instead of nurturing everyone else's. It's terrifying and exhilarating and exactly what I need to be doing. Maya smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You know what's funny? I came here thinking I was helping you start a business. But really, you're teaching me how to live authentically, how to claim my own worth without apology. Maybe we're teaching each other, I suggested. The next morning, we arrived at Threadwork to find a bouquet of flowers outside the door, not from Amanda, as I briefly hoped, but from Sophia and her husband, celebrating their 1-month anniversary and thanking us again for the dress that made their perfect day even more magical. I placed the flowers on our front counter, where their beauty and fragrance could remind us why we were doing this work. Clients began arriving soon after, each with their own story, their own body, their own desire to be seen and celebrated rather than corrected or concealed. As I took measurements for a 68-year-old woman who wanted, for the first time in her life, a pair of pants that didn't gap at the waist or pull across the hips, I thought about Amanda's words. Was Threadwork about proving something? Perhaps it was not to Amanda or James or Eleanor, but to myself. Proving that it's never too late to recognize your own worth. Proving that rejection can become revolution, one stitch at a time. The local news interview aired the following week, featuring Threadwork as part of a series on second-act success stories. The segment highlighted our rapid growth, our employment of experienced seamstresses who'd been displaced by factory closures, and our commitment to celebrating women's bodies at every age and stage. What makes Threadwork different, I explained on camera, is that we don't see women's bodies as problems to be solved. We see them as stories to be honored. Every curve, every angle, every mark is part of what makes each woman uniquely herself. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Our website crashed from the traffic. Our phone rang constantly. Women drove from neighboring states for consultations. One client flew in from Chicago, saying she'd given up hope of ever finding clothes that fit both my body and my soul. In the midst of this success, the challenges intensified. A fabric supplier failed to deliver critical materials, forcing us to scramble for alternatives. A client was unhappy with her completed garment, requiring hours of adjustments and redesign. The building owner mentioned raising our rent when the lease renewed, citing the area's increasing desirability. Maya and I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, fueled by passion and terror in equal measure. We were successful. Yes, but success brought vulnerability. We now had employees depending on us for their livelihoods. We had clients who'd paid deposits and were waiting for garments. We had a reputation to maintain. We need to be careful about growing too fast, I cautioned during one late-night planning session. Quality has to remain our top priority. Agreed, Maya said. But we also need to be smart about scaling. If we stay too small, we become exclusive and inaccessible, the opposite of our mission. The tension between these priorities became our constant companion as Threadwork evolved from a fledgling startup to a recognized name in Portland's fashion landscape. Every decision required balancing artistic integrity with business reality, personal attention with practical efficiency. One evening, as I was locking up the shop, I noticed a familiar figure across the street, Amanda, watching from a distance, her expression unreadable in the gathering dusk. She didn't approach, and I didn't call out to her. We existed in that moment as strangers connected by blood, but separated by choices neither of us fully understood. I thought of the emerald silk dress, now completed and delivered to the retired surgeon, who'd wept when she saw herself in our triple mirror. I thought of Mrs. Abernathy, who'd sent us a photo of herself dancing at her grandson's wedding, her forest green dress swirling around her with elegant grace. I thought of Sophia in the wedding dress that had started everything, the dress Amanda had rejected. Perhaps someday, Amanda would understand what Threadwork represented, not a rejection of her, but an embracing of myself, not a business venture, but a reclamation of value, not a hobby gotten out of hand, but a passion finally given room to flourish. Until then, I would continue creating beauty one stitch at a time, transforming rejection into revolution, proving that sometimes the most powerful statement a woman can make is simply to recognize her own worth at any age. Threadwork celebrated its 3-month anniversary with a small gathering after hours. The shop was transformed by twinkling lights and flowers, with dress forms displaying our signature pieces throughout the space. Maya had arranged for a local caterer to provide appetizers and champagne, and invited our clients, employees, and supporters to celebrate our unexpected success. To Donna Hughes, Maya raised her glass, addressing the crowded room, who turned rejection into revolution and taught all of us that it's never too late to recognize your own worth. The women in the room, clients who'd become friends, employees who'd found new purpose, supporters who believed in our vision, applauded with genuine warmth. I felt a flush of emotion rise to my cheeks, still uncomfortable with praise, but learning to accept it as genuine. And to Maya Rodriguez, I countered, raising my own glass, who saw possibility where others saw just an old woman with a hobby. The celebration continued into the evening, filled with stories of transformation. Catherine, our attorney client, brought photos of herself winning a major case in her Threadwork suit. Mrs. Abernathy introduced her grandson and his new wife, who was now scheduling her own consultation. Maria and Judith, our seamstresses, proudly showed off the custom pieces they'd completed independently. As the party wound down, a woman I didn't recognize approached me, elegant, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Mrs. Hughes, I'm Naomi Wilson," she extended a business card. "I'm a documentary filmmaker with Authentic Narratives Productions. I'd like to discuss the possibility of featuring Threadwork in my next project." I glanced at the card, recognizing the name of a well-respected documentary series that had won several awards. "What kind of documentary?" "I'm creating a series called Late Bloomers about people who find extraordinary success or purpose after 50. Your story from rejected wedding dress to thriving business in just a few months is exactly the kind of transformation I want to highlight." Before I could respond, Maya appeared at my elbow, her business sense immediately engaged. "We'd need to discuss terms, of course," she said, taking Naomi's card. "Timeline, compensation, creative control," Naomi smiled. "Of course, I'm not looking to sensationalize or exploit. I want to tell authentic stories of reinvention that might inspire others. We could start with a preliminary interview, see if there's a good fit." After she left, Maya squeezed my arm excitedly. "A documentary! Donna, this could take Threadwork to a national audience." "It would also mean exposing very personal parts of my life," I reminded her. "Including the situation with Amanda." Maya's expression sobered. "True. But think about all the women in their 60s and beyond who believe their creative lives are over, who've been dismissed because of their age. Your story could show them another possibility. I thought about the countless times I'd dimmed my own light to avoid making others uncomfortable, the years I'd spent making myself smaller, less ambitious, less demanding, the wedding dress I'd poured my heart into, only to have it dismissed as thrift store quality. I'll think about it, I promised. The next morning, I arrived at Threadwork to find a young woman waiting outside, clutching a garment bag and looking nervous. "Can I help you?" I asked, unlocking the door. "Mrs. Hughes, I'm Taylor, Amanda's assistant." She held out the garment bag like a peace offering. "Amanda asked me to bring this to you." Inside was my original wedding dress, the one that had started everything. It was slightly wrinkled from being stored improperly, but otherwise intact. Every pearl and French seam exactly as I'd created them. There was no note, no explanation. Just the dress, returned without commentary. I hung it on a dress form in my private studio at the back of the shop, studying it with new eyes. 3 months ago, this dress had represented heartbreak and rejection. Now it seemed like a turning point, the moment I'd stopped living for others' approval and started honoring my own vision. Maya found me there, still contemplating the dress. "Amanda sent it," she asked, recognizing the gown immediately. "Via her assistant, no message." "What do you think it means?" I ran my fingers over the beadwork, feeling each pearl I'd sewn with love and hope. "I'm not sure. It could be a peace offering, or it could be her way of saying she's done with the past." "What will you do with it?" I considered the question. The dress was exquisite, despite its complicated history. It deserved to be worn, to fulfill its purpose. "I think," I said slowly, "we should add it to the Threadwork collection. Not to sell, but to inspire. Every woman who walks through our doors should see what's possible when we create without compromise." Maya nodded. "Perfect. It's where our story began. After all." As our 4th month in business began, Threadwork faced its most significant challenge yet. A large department store had taken notice of our success and approached us with an offer they wanted to create a Threadwork for Dillingham's collection, mass-produced versions of our most popular designs to be sold in their stores nationwide. It would mean major exposure, Maya pointed out as we discussed the offer over lunch. And the financial terms are generous. But it would also mean compromising on what makes Threadwork special, I countered. Mass production means standardized sizes, lower quality materials, outsourced construction. Everything we've defined ourselves against. Not necessarily. We could insist on ethical manufacturing, quality control oversight, size inclusivity. We could transform how department stores approach women's clothing. It was a compelling vision, but something about it made me uneasy. I remembered Amanda's suggestion to use synthetic blends instead of silk, and source-beading wholesale instead of hand-sewing everything. The department store's proposal felt like a more sophisticated version of the same fundamental misunderstanding. "Let me think about it," I said, echoing my response to the documentary proposal. That afternoon, a woman in her 70s came for a consultation. She moved slowly with a cane, her body shaped by decades of living and various health challenges. "I've spent 60 years wearing clothes that make me feel apologetic for existing," she explained as I took her measurements. "Elastic waistbands because nothing else fits, dark colors to hide my size, shapeless tops to conceal my curves. I'm tired of hiding. Mrs. Hughes. Before I die, I want to wear something that makes me feel like myself." As I sketched designs that would honor her body rather than attempting to disguise it, I knew my answer about the department store offer. Threadwork wasn't just a brand or a business model. It was a philosophy about women's relationships with their bodies and their clothes. Mass production, no matter how well-intentioned, would inevitably dilute that philosophy. "We're going to decline the Dillingham's offer," I told Maya that evening. "Our strength is in custom work, in the personal connection, in creating clothes that tell each woman's unique story. That can't be mass-produced." She nodded, unsurprised. "I thought you might say that, and I agree. We'll find other ways to grow that don't compromise our core values." The next challenge emerged unexpectedly. A former client posted a complaint online, claiming her threadwork garment hadn't lived up to expectations and that we'd been unresponsive to her concerns. The post gained traction in local social media circles, threatening the reputation we'd worked so hard to build. I remember her, Maya frowned, reviewing the client file. Mrs. Lawson. We made a mother of the bride dress for her, and she requested 3 major design changes after construction was nearly complete. We accommodated those changes, I recalled, even though they weren't part of the original agreement, and we didn't charge her for the additional work, Maya confirmed. But now she's claiming the dress made her look frumpy and that we refused to fix it. It was our first significant public relations crisis, and it stung particularly because it felt so unfair. We prided ourselves on customer satisfaction and had gone beyond our contractual obligations to please this client. How should we handle this? I asked, unfamiliar with the rules of online reputation management. Professionally, Maya decided. We'll post a polite response expressing regret that she was unhappy with her experience, reiterating our commitment to customer satisfaction, and inviting her to contact us directly to resolve any outstanding issues. No defensiveness, no detailed rebuttals that might escalate the situation. Her approach worked. Our response earned supportive comments from other clients, and Mrs. Lawson eventually removed her negative post after we offered to make further adjustments to her dress at no cost. Crisis averted, Maya sighed with relief. But it's a good reminder that we can't please everyone, even when we do everything right. Despite these challenges, threadwork continued to thrive. We expanded our team, hiring a 3rd seamstress and an apprentice who showed exceptional promise. We developed the limited collection of signature pieces that could be tailored to individual clients, making threadwork accessible to women with more modest budgets. We even began offering workshops where women could learn basic sewing and alteration techniques to modify their existing wardrobes. Throughout it all, I kept waiting for Amanda to reappear to call, to visit, to acknowledge the business I'd built. The wedding dress hung in my studio like a question without an answer. A conversation interrupted. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the bell above our door chimed, and Amanda walked in. Amanda stood in the entrance of Threadwork, water dripping from her umbrella, her expression unreadable. The shop was busy with clients and employees, a hum of creative energy that momentarily faltered as they recognized my daughter. "Mom," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone I'd learned to brace myself against. "Do you have a minute?" I led her to my private studio at the back, away from curious eyes. The wedding dress still hung on its form in the corner, a silent witness to our complicated history. "You got the dress," Amanda noted, avoiding my gaze. "Yes, thank you for returning it." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and mismatched expectations. "The business seems to be doing well," she finally offered. "It is beyond our projections, actually." "That's good." She adjusted her purse strap, a nervous gesture I recognized from her childhood. "I wanted to talk to you about something. The documentary." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "Naomi Wilson contacted me. She wants to interview family members about your transformation." Amanda's fingers made air quotes around the word. I told her I wasn't interested. Of course she had. The thought of cameras capturing her dismissal of the dress, of the world seeing how she'd treated her mother's gift, must have been terrifying. "That's your choice," I said evenly. "Mom, please, can we talk about this? I think we need to discuss it face to face." I looked around my studio at the half-finished gowns hanging like promises on their forms, at the inspiration board covered with sketches and fabric swatches, at the business cards Maya had designed featuring our logo and the tagline, "Where every body tells a story worth honoring." I'm very busy these days, perhaps after the holidays. Christmas was 8 weeks away. The suggestion hung between us like a door closing slowly but decisively. "Mom, I have a fitting at 2, I interrupted gently. "Was there anything else you needed to discuss?" Amanda looked as if I'd slapped her, her eyes widening with hurt and surprise. For a moment, I saw the little girl who'd expected me to drop everything whenever she called, who'd assumed my time and attention were her birthright. "No, she said stiffly. I guess not. After she left, I sat at my work table, hands trembling slightly as I threaded a needle. For 23 years, my first instinct had always been to prioritize Amanda's needs, to smooth her path, to protect her feelings even at the expense of my own. Breaking that pattern felt both liberating and terrifying. Maya found me there, still sitting with an unthreaded needle. Amanda was here, she observed, seeing my expression. Yes, about the documentary. She told Naomi Wilson she wasn't interested in being interviewed. Are you okay? I considered the question seriously. I'm sad. But I'm also resolute. For months, I've been changing, growing, becoming someone new. But this felt different. This felt like the moment I stopped being Amanda's mother first and became Donna Hughes, artist and businesswoman, who happened to have a daughter. Maya squeezed my shoulder. That's a profound shift. It is. I picked up the needle again, threading it with steady hands. Now, I believe Mrs. Thornton is waiting for her final fitting. The documentary filming began the following week. Naomi and her small crew became familiar presences at Threadwork, capturing our daily operations, client consultations, and the process of creating custom garments from concept to completion. They interviewed Maya about our business model, Maria and Judith about finding new purpose after factory closures, and clients about their experiences wearing clothes that truly fit their bodies. My own interviews were the most challenging intimate conversations about identity, aging, rejection, and reinvention that forced me to articulate feelings I'd barely acknowledged to myself. Tell me about the moment you decided to start Threadwork, Naomi prompted during one session. I thought carefully before answering. It wasn't a single moment. It was a series of recognitions. Recognizing that my skills had value. Recognizing that Maya saw something in me that I'd forgotten was there. Recognizing that at 62, I still had the right to pursue joy and purpose on my own terms. And your daughter's rejection of the wedding dress, how did that factor into your decision? This was the question I'd been dreading, the one that required me to speak painful truths about Amanda. The dress was a catalyst, I said carefully, not because Amanda chose another gown that was her right as the bride, but because of how the rejection happened. The dismissive language, the suggestion that my work was embarrassing, something to be hidden away. I took a deep breath. In that moment, I realized I'd spent decades accepting the narrative that my creativity was just a hobby, that my skills were quaint but not valuable, that my vision didn't deserve to be taken seriously. Threadwork became my way of rejecting that narrative. Naomi nodded, her eyes kind but probing. And your relationship with Amanda now? Complicated, I admitted. We're both adjusting to a new reality where I'm not defined primarily as her mother. It's an ongoing process. 2 weeks into filming, as November deepened into early winter, the story broke that changed everything. Pacific Northwest magazine ran a feature called The Seamstress Who Stole Christmas, a play on words that made Maya groan but generated enormous attention. The article detailed my journey from rejected wedding dress to thriving business, complete with before and after photos and client testimonials that read like love letters to craftsmanship. But it was the sidebar that made my phone ring nonstop for 3 days. Under the headline, The Dress That Started It All, the magazine had printed the full story of Amanda's wedding, how I'd spent 6 months creating a couture gown only to have it dismissed as thrift store quality by my own daughter. They'd obtained photos of both the dress and Amanda's reaction, though they'd had the courtesy to blur her face in the published images. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with support for the mom who turned rejection into revolution. Threadwork began trending on Twitter. Fashion bloggers wrote think pieces about ageism in creative industries and the value of handmade craftsmanship. Most tellingly, orders poured in from women who specifically mentioned wanting to support a business that honored rather than dismissed their mother's generation. Maya found me in the studio on the 3rd day of media chaos, sitting at my sewing machine with tears streaming down my face as I worked on a simple hem. Donna, what's wrong? This is amazing publicity. We're booked solid through next summer. I know, I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. That's not why I'm crying. Then why? I set down my needle and turned to face her. Because 37 years ago, when Amanda was born, I dreamed of being the kind of mother she'd be proud of. I worked 2 jobs to put her through college. I sacrificed every luxury to give her advantages I'd never had. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that she was supposed to be proud of me, too. Maya sat beside me on the small bench, her expression thoughtful. You know what I think, she said finally. I think you did raise her to be proud of you. But somewhere along the way, she forgot that pride isn't about having a mother who's convenient or conventional. It's about having a mother who's brave enough to become exactly who she's meant to be. Outside our studio windows, Portland's winter rain painted abstract patterns on glass that had become synonymous with transformation. Inside, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the evidence of dreams made manifest, I realized that Amanda's opinion, once the sun around which my world orbited, had become just one voice among many. And for the first time in decades, it wasn't the loudest voice in the room. The first snow of December fell on a Thursday, the same day Amanda finally came to see what I had built. I spotted Amanda through the large windows of threadwork, standing on the sidewalk across the street like a tourist studying a foreign landmark. She wore the black wool coat I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago, expertly tailored. Expensive. The kind of safe choice that looked appropriate in any setting without making any statements about the woman wearing it. For 20 minutes, she stood there while I worked with Mrs. Patterson on a holiday dress fitting, both of us pretending not to notice the figure in black watching from the cold. Mrs. Patterson, my old neighbor who'd become one of my most enthusiastic clients, finally broke the careful silence. Isn't that your daughter out there? She looks frozen half to death. Yes, she said, adjusting the hem of her burgundy velvet gown. She does? Well, for heaven's sake, Donna, let the girl come in before she turns into a popsicle. But I didn't move toward the door, and Amanda didn't cross the street. We stayed in our respective territories, separated by asphalt and 8 months of choices that couldn't be undone. When Mrs. Patterson left, bundled in her coat and carrying the garment bag with quiet pride, Amanda finally approached. She pushed through this door with the careful movements of someone entering enemy territory, her eyes taking in the transformed space, the gleaming hardwood floors Maya and I had refinished ourselves, the custom fitting rooms with their elegant curtains, the gallery wall featuring photographs of our work. Mom, her voice was smaller than I remembered. Amanda. She moved through the studio like someone touring a museum exhibit, pausing at the cutting table where I was working on a New Year's Eve gown for a client who wanted to feel spectacular at 68. The silver silk caught the afternoon light, and I watched Amanda recognize the quality of the construction, the complexity of the beadwork, the hours of skilled labor that had gone into every seam. It's beautiful, she said finally. Thank you. The magazine article. She stopped, swallowed, tried again. I didn't know they were going to write about the wedding dress, about what I said. I continued pinning the bodice, my movements steady and practiced. What did you think would happen when you dismissed 6 months of my work as thrift store quality? Did you think it would remain private forever? I was nervous. Eleanor was being Eleanor. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to laugh. The words fell between us like dropped pins. Amanda flinched as if I'd slapped her. I've apologized for that. I called you. I sent flowers. You sent flowers to yourself, I interrupted. To make yourself feel better about hurting me. You never once asked how I felt. You never acknowledged what that dress represented. Amanda moved to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass that separated warm from cold, inside from outside. I know you're angry with me. No. I set down my pins and faced her directly. I was angry for about a week. Then I realized anger was just another way of making your opinions more important than my reality. What does that mean? It means I stopped caring whether you approved of my choices and started caring whether I approved of them. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of 8 months of transformation. Outside, Portland's December afternoon painted everything in shades of gray and silver, while inside our studio glowed with warm light and the evidence of work that mattered. The documentary comes out next month, Amanda said abruptly. Naomi Wilson called me again. She wanted to include interviews with you and me discussing our reconciliation. Our what? Amanda's cheeks flushed. I told her we were working things out, that you'd forgiven me, and we were closer than ever because of what happened. I stared at my daughter. This woman I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved with the fierce completeness that only mothers know, and felt nothing but a vast, calm clarity. You told a documentary filmmaker that I'd forgiven you without ever asking if that was true. Haven't you forgiven me? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amanda's eyes held the expectation of absolution, the assumption that maternal love would eventually overcome any wound, that enough time and success would erase the memory of her cruelty. Amanda, I said gently, forgiveness isn't something you get to declare on my behalf. But you're my mother. Yes, I am. And for 62 years, I believed that meant I had to absorb every hurt, excuse every slight, and pretend that your needs mattered more than my dignity. But mothers are also human beings with feelings that deserve respect. Amanda's composure finally cracked. So you're never going to forgive me I'm supposed to pay for one moment of weakness for the rest of my life. One moment, I moved to the gallery wall where photographs showed the evolution of threadwork, from Sophia's wedding dress to Mrs. Abernathy's forest green elegance to dozens of women who'd found confidence in custom clothing. This wasn't one moment, Amanda. This was years of treating me like an embarrassment, of dismissing my opinions, of assuming your husband's judgment carried more weight than my experience. That's not true. When was the last time you asked my advice about something important? When did you last visit me without needing a favor? When have you ever introduced me to your friends as someone you're proud of rather than someone you have to explain? Each question landed like a perfectly placed stitch, holding together a pattern she had never been forced to see clearly. She stopped, her hands twisting the strap of her expensive handbag. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe it doesn't need to be fixed, I said. Maybe it needs to be accepted as it is. Maya chose that moment to return from her lunch meeting with a potential investor, her arms full of fabric samples and her face bright with cold air and excitement. She stopped short when she saw Amanda, her expression shifting to careful neutrality. Amanda, she said with professional politeness. How nice to see you. Maya. Amanda's voice carried the particular stiffness she reserved for people she considered beneath her notice. I see business is going well. Better than well. We're expanding to a second location in Seattle next year. I watched Amanda process this information, saw her realize that Maya, the waitress she'd dismissed as getting above herself, was now my business partner in an enterprise worth more than James made in consulting fees. That's congratulations, Amanda managed. Thank you. Maya set down her samples and moved to the cutting table, her presence creating a buffer between Amanda and me. Donna, the investor loved your portfolio. She wants to feature threadwork in her magazine's spring issue about women entrepreneurs over 50. Women entrepreneurs over 50. The phrase would have been unimaginable to me a year ago, when I was still defining myself as Amanda's mother and Robert's widow and a retired teacher filling empty hours with hobbies. Amanda watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't her mother's little sewing project that needed managing or improving. This was a legitimate business run by women who knew their worth and demanded respect for their expertise. I should go, Amanda said suddenly. I can see you're busy. Amanda, I stopped her at the door. I want you to understand something. I don't hate you. I don't wish you ill. But I also don't need your approval, or your management, or your version of looking out for me. So where does that leave us? I considered the question seriously, looking at this woman who shared my DNA but not my values, who'd inherited my stubbornness but not my respect for others' dreams. It leaves us as two adults who happen to be related, I said. Ed. If you want more than that, you'll need to earn it not through apologies or flowers or telling documentary filmmakers we've reconciled, but through actions that show you actually respect the woman I've become. Amanda's face cycled through emotions: hurt, anger, recognition, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. And if I can't do that, then you can't, but I won't pretend otherwise to make either of us more comfortable. She nodded slowly, tears making her mascara run slightly. the same way Sophia's had when she first saw herself in my wedding dress, but for different reasons entirely. "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, Amanda." The door closed behind her with a soft chime, and I watched through the window as she walked back to her car. She didn't look back at the studio, didn't pause to admire the elegant sign Maya had commissioned or the window display featuring our latest work. "You okay?" Maya asked quietly. "I'm perfect," I said and meant it. In the weeks that followed, Threadwork continued its upward trajectory. The documentary filming wrapped, with Naomi promising a February premiere on a major streaming platform. The Seattle location moved from concept to reality as we signed a lease on a space in the city's arts district. We hired 4 more seamstresses, all women over 40 with exceptional skills and few employment prospects in an industry obsessed with youth. Our biggest challenge emerged unexpectedly when a venture capitalist approached us with an offer that was both tempting and terrifying significant investment to expand Threadwork nationally, with locations in major cities and a robust online presence. It would mean reaching thousands more women, Maya pointed out as we discussed the proposal over late-night tea in my apartment. Taking our philosophy to a much broader audience. It would also mean losing control, I countered. Answering to investors whose primary concern is profit, not purpose. Not necessarily. The term sheet includes provisions for maintaining creative control. We'd still make all the design decisions, but we'd be under pressure to grow faster, to generate returns. Could we maintain our quality standards, our commitment to fair wages and ethical production, our connection with clients? These were the questions that kept me awake at night as Threadwork stood at a crossroads. The path we chose would determine not just our business future, but the very nature of what we'd created: a sanctuary where women found clothes that honored their bodies rather than attempting to change them. After weeks of deliberation, consultations with lawyers, and honest conversations with our team, Maya and I made our decision. "We're declining the venture capital," I told our staff during a morning meeting. "We'll continue to grow, but at a pace that allows us to maintain our standards and our values." "But we're not standing still," Maya added quickly. "We're launching the Threadwork Collective, a network of independent seamstresses and designers who share our philosophy. We'll provide training, materials, patterns, and business support, allowing skilled women to create Threadwork quality garments in their own communities." It was a middle path, neither the rapid expansion the investors wanted, nor the boutique exclusivity that would limit our impact. The collective would allow us to reach more women while maintaining the personal touch and quality that defined Threadwork. As the year drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from wedding dress rejection to business revolution. The dress that Amanda had dismissed now hung prominently in our studio, a testament to the power of recognition, both the pain of having one's work dismissed and the joy of having it truly seen. The Channel 7 interview aired on a Tuesday evening in October, exactly 6 months after Amanda's wedding. I watched it from Maya's apartment above the bakery, surrounded by fabric samples and business plans, while she provided a running commentary that made me laugh until my sides hurt. "Look at you," she said as my televised self explained the difference between machine-sewn and hand-rolled hems. "You look like you've been doing interviews your whole life." On screen, I demonstrated the beadwork on Sophia's dress, now featured prominently in our portfolio, while Betty Reynolds asked about my background. The woman being interviewed looked confident, professional, passionate about her craft. She didn't look like someone's discarded mother or a retired teacher filling empty hours with busy work. "Donna Hughes's story is remarkable," Betty's voice narrated over shots of my studio. "After 37 years of teaching, she's found a second calling creating custom gowns that rival the world's top designers. Her waiting list now extends 8 months, and she's recently partnered with Maya Rodriguez to launch Threadwork, a boutique specializing in custom clothing for real women's bodies." Real women's bodies. The phrase had been Maya's suggestion, and hearing it on television made something fierce and proud unfurl in my chest. The segment ended with Sophia's wedding footage, the dress flowing like liquid starlight as she danced with her new husband, her face radiant with joy that had nothing to do with expensive venues or designer labels, and everything to do with love celebrated authentically. Maya's phone started ringing before the credits finished rolling. Within a week, we had 47 new inquiries, 3 requests from out-of-state clients, and an email from Naomi Wilson confirming that the documentary would premiere on Netflix in February. More importantly, we had finalized the details for the Threadwork Collective, creating an application process for seamstresses who wanted to join our network and developing training materials to ensure consistent quality across all locations. "This is how we scale without losing our soul," Maya explained during a presentation to our team. "We're not just building a brand, we're creating a movement. Each collective member will be an independent artisan, bringing Threadwork's philosophy to her own community while maintaining her creative autonomy." The approach resonated with our team, particularly Maria and Judith, who saw the potential for their peers, skilled women marginalized by an industry fixated on novelty and low costs. "We know so many amazing seamstresses who can't find decent work," Maria noted. "Women with decades of experience who've been told they're obsolete because they can't operate computerized machines or work 60-hour weeks." "The collective could change that," Judith agreed. "Give them a way to use their skills on their own terms." As we worked to launch this new initiative, I expected to hear from Amanda. The Channel 7 segment had generated significant local attention, and friends had surely mentioned it to her. But my phone remained silent, at least as far as my daughter was concerned. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, the story broke wide open. Pacific Northwest magazine ran their feature with the playful headline, "The Seamstress Who Stole Christmas," detailing Threadwork's rapid growth and unexpected impact on the local fashion scene. The sidebar about Amanda's rejection of the wedding dress, complete with blurred photos and direct quotes about thrift store quality, generated an avalanche of public support and maternal solidarity. Women across the country shared their own stories of being dismissed or devalued because of their age, their appearance, or their traditionally feminine skills. Respect Your Mother began trending on Twitter, with users sharing photos of handmade items their mothers had created and the appreciation or lack thereof these treasures had received. I hadn't expected or wanted Amanda to become a public villain in my success story. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, still the child I'd raised alone after Robert died, still connected to me by bonds that transcended our current estrangement. On the 3rd day of the media frenzy, I was sitting in my office at Threadwork when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Hughes, this is Eleanor Winters, Amanda's mother-in-law." My hand tightened on the phone. "Hello, Eleanor. This situation has gotten out of hand." Her voice carried the careful control of someone managing a crisis. "The magazine article, the social media response it's affecting Amanda professionally. People are connecting her name to the story." "I'm sorry to hear that." And I was. Genuinely. But I didn't write the article or start the hashtag. "But you could issue a statement. Clarify that Amanda's actions have been misrepresented, that there's been a misunderstanding." That would be dishonest. "Eleanor, there was no misrepresentation. Amanda did reject the dress I spent 6 months making. She did call it thrift store quality. Those things happened." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of Eleanor's measured breathing. "Mrs. Hughes, Donna, surely you understand the position this puts Amanda in. She's the fundraising director for a major nonprofit. Their donors are asking questions about her character." The irony wasn't lost on me that Amanda, who had been so concerned about appearances on her wedding day, was now facing public scrutiny for exactly that choice. "What would you like me to do, Eleanor?" "Speak to the magazine. Ask them to retract the sidebar. Tell them you're reconciled with Amanda and that the whole incident has been blown out of proportion." I thought about Amanda standing in Threadwork, telling me she'd already informed Naomi Wilson that we'd reconciled, making decisions about my feelings without consulting me. "I can't do that," I said finally. "I won't lie to protect Amanda from the consequences of her choices, but I can make a statement clarifying that I don't support any harassment directed at her and that our personal relationship is separate from Threadwork's success." Eleanor's silence told me this wasn't the solution she'd hoped for. "I'll discuss it with James," she said finally, and hung up. The next day, Amanda appeared at Threadwork again, this time accompanied by James. They arrived during a quiet afternoon when most of our staff was at lunch, leaving only Maya and me in the shop. "Mom," Amanda began without preamble, "this has to stop." "The magazine article. The social media storm, it's damaging my reputation. I know you didn't write it, Amanda said, frustration evident in her voice. But you gave them the story. You've been telling everyone who will listen about how I rejected your dress. That's not true, I countered calmly. I've been honest about my journey when asked, including the catalyst that led to starting Threadwork. But I've never sought to publicly embarrass you. James stepped forward, his expression professionally concerned. Donna, we understand this business has been meaningful for you, but surely you can see how this narrative is harmful to Amanda's career. Donors are questioning her judgment. Colleagues are whispering. The optics are terrible. The optics, I repeated softly. That seems to be a recurring concern in your family. Maya moved closer to me, a quiet show of support. Threadwork's story is authentic, she said. Women connect with it because they've experienced similar dismissals in their own lives. That's not something we should hide to protect Amanda's image. Amanda's face flushed. This isn't about my image. It's about my livelihood, about respect. Respect, I echoed, the word hanging between us like a challenge. When you rejected the dress, did you consider my livelihood, my respect, the 6 months of work I'd invested? That was different, Amanda insisted. It was a private family matter. And now it's a public story of transformation, I said. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because it's the truth of how Threadwork began. James put his hand on Amanda's arm, a gesture that seemed both supportive and restraining. What do you want, Donna? An apology? Financial compensation? What will it take to resolve this situation? The question stunned me with its fundamentally transactional nature. As if human relationships could be negotiated like business contracts. As if maternal love could be quantified and settled. I don't want anything from you, I said quietly. I've already found what I needed: recognition of my own worth. That's not something either of you can give or take away. So you're just going to let this continue? Amanda demanded. Let people think I'm some kind of monster who humiliated her mother. I've already drafted a statement, I told her, retrieving a printed page from my desk. It makes clear that while the events happened as reported, I don't condone any harassment directed at you, and that our personal relationship is separate from Threadwork's mission. Amanda took the paper, scanning it with suspicious eyes. This doesn't fix anything. It's not meant to fix things. Amanda, it's meant to be honest while showing basic compassion. Will you post it today? James asked. Yes. Maya will share it on all our social media channels immediately. They left without further argument, though Amanda's parting glance held a mixture of resentment and something that might have been grudging respect. The statement was posted as promised, and while it didn't end the public conversation about mothers, daughters, and recognition, it did redirect attention to Threadwork's broader mission rather than the personal drama that had sparked it. For the next several weeks, a tentative peace settled over my relationship with Amanda. She didn't visit or call, but neither did she continue her campaign to manage my public narrative. I focused on Threadwork's expansion, the launch of the collective, and preparations for the documentary premiere, finding fulfillment in building something meaningful at an age when society expected me to fade quietly into irrelevance. The documentary The Seamstress premiered on Netflix in February, exactly as planned. Maya organized a viewing party at Threadwork, transforming our workspace into a makeshift theater with a projector, comfortable seating, and catered refreshments. Our team gathered with friends, supporters, and several clients who'd been featured in the film, creating an atmosphere of celebratory anticipation. Naomi Wilson had crafted a thoughtful, nuanced portrait of late-life reinvention, using my story as the central thread while weaving in perspectives from other women who'd found unexpected purpose after 50. The rejection of the wedding dress was presented not as family drama, but as a catalyst for personal awakening, the moment when I'd recognized that my creative voice deserved to be heard. Most powerfully, the film showed the impact of Threadwork on our clients, women of all ages, shapes, and backgrounds who'd found confidence and joy in clothes that honored rather than criticized their bodies. Their testimonials, honest and unscripted, validated everything Maya and I had worked to build. As the credits rolled, the room erupted in applause and more than a few tears. Hugs and congratulations flowed freely, the energy electric with shared pride in what we'd accomplished. in the midst of the celebration. I slipped away to my office for a moment of quiet reflection. Sitting at my desk, surrounded by sketches and fabric samples and the evidence of a life reinvented, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not an ending, threadwork was still growing, still evolving, but the satisfaction of having come full circle from rejection to recognition, from invisibility to impact. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Maya stood in the doorway, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "In the front room." "Who is it, Amanda?" My heart gave a complicated little jump. "Is she alone? Yes? No James? No Eleanor? Just Amanda." I found my daughter standing beside the dress form that still displayed her rejected wedding gown, studying it with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. She wore jeans and a simple sweater rather than her usual corporate attire, and her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail that reminded me of her college days. "I watched the documentary," she said without turning around. "Naomi sent me an advance copy." "What did you think?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "It was—" She paused, searching for words. "Illuminating. To see myself through other people's eyes. To see you through other people's eyes." I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. "I didn't realize," she said finally, facing me, "how dismissive I've been. How I treated your skills as quaint little hobbies rather than real accomplishments. The documentary made that very clear. It wasn't intended to shame you, Amanda." "I know. That's what made it so effective. Actually, it wasn't angry or accusatory. It just showed the truth." She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Mom, not just for the dress, but for years of not seeing you clearly, for assuming I knew better than you about your own life." The apology hung between us, fragile but genuine. I studied my daughter's face, seeing both the child I'd raised and the woman she'd become, with all her flaws and possibilities. "Thank you for saying that," I said simply. "I don't expect everything to be magically fixed," she continued, "but I'd like to try, to see you really see you as you are now, not just as my mother." "I'd like that too." A tentative smile flickered across her face. "The dress really is beautiful. You know, I was too caught up in what Eleanor might think, in fitting into James's world, to appreciate it then. But it's extraordinary craftsmanship." "Thank you." I moved beside her, both of us looking at the gown that had changed everything. "It found its purpose, just not the one I originally intended." Amanda nodded. "Sophia looked radiant in it. I saw the wedding photos in the documentary." She did. A comfortable silence settled between us. Not the strained absence of words from our previous encounters, but something gentler, more thoughtful. "Would you like to stay?" I asked. "There's quite a celebration happening in the main room." "I'd like that," she said. "If you're sure your team won't mind." "They might be a little wary at first," I admitted. "Maya in particular has become quite protective." "I deserve that," Amanda acknowledged. "But I'd like the chance to show them and you that I can do better." We rejoined the party together, Amanda hanging back slightly as I introduced her to staff members she hadn't yet met. Maya watched with cautious eyes but offered a polite greeting, her loyalty to me evident in every measured word. As the evening progressed, I observed Amanda making a genuine effort asking questions about the business, complimenting specific pieces, listening more than she spoke. It wasn't a miraculous transformation, but it was a beginning, a small step toward the possibility of a relationship based on mutual respect rather than expected deference. The documentary's release catapulted threadwork into national awareness. Orders poured in from across the country. Women flew to Portland for consultations, and fashion publications that had previously ignored us now requested interviews and features. Our Instagram following grew by thousands each week, and the Threadwork Collective received applications from skilled seamstresses in 27 states. "We need to be strategic about this growth," Maya cautioned during one of our planning sessions. "We can't lose what makes Threadwork special in the rush to expand." "Agreed," I said. "Quality over quantity, authenticity over expediency. Those principles aren't negotiable." We developed a careful expansion plan, opening the Seattle location as planned but resisting pressure to launch quickly in other major markets. Instead, we focused on building the collective, creating a network of independent artisans who shared our philosophy and standards. Think of it as slow fashion in the truest sense. I explained to a reporter from Women's Wear Daily, not just sustainable materials and ethical production, but a deliberate pace that honors the craft and the client equally. The interview appeared under the headline, Threadwork Redefining Fashion One Stitch at a Time, introducing our approach to a broader audience of industry professionals and conscious consumers. As Threadwork's public profile grew, my relationship with Amanda continued its careful rebuilding. We established a monthly lunch date, neutral territory where we could connect without the pressure of family occasions or business discussions. Sometimes these meetings were awkward, both of us navigating unfamiliar terrain in our new dynamic. Other times, we found unexpected moments of connection, glimpses of the closeness we'd once shared. I showed the documentary to James, Amanda mentioned during one such lunch in late March. He actually watched the whole thing. And what did he think, I asked, curious about my son-in-law's reaction. He was impressed, she admitted, not just with the business success, but with the whole concept. He said it made him think differently about the clothes Eleanor buys, how they're made, who makes them, whether they actually serve her needs or just project a certain image. That's surprising, I acknowledged. Amanda smiled ruefully. He's not a bad person. Mom, just products of a particular world with particular values. Like I was. She paused. Am, sometimes still. These moments of self-awareness gave me hope that our relationship might eventually find its way to something authentic rather than merely dutiful. The most unexpected development came in April, when Eleanor Winters herself appeared at Threadwork's door, without warning or appointment. Mrs. Hughes, she said with the careful politeness of someone entering uncertain territory. I was hoping we might speak privately. I led her to my office, noticing Maya's raised eyebrows and protective hover as we passed. Eleanor settled primly on the edge of the visitor's chair, her posture as precisely controlled as her voice. I've been following Threadwork's success, she began. The documentary, the magazine features, the expansion. It's quite remarkable. Thank you, I said, waiting for the qualification that usually followed such compliments from Eleanor. Instead, she surprised me. I was wrong about you, about your work. I made assumptions based on prejudices I didn't even realize I held. The admission clearly cost her, each word extracted with visible effort. I appreciate your saying that, I responded, genuinely touched by her vulnerability. I've come with a request, she continued, straightening her already impeccable jacket. My sister is turning 70 next month. She's always struggled with finding clothes that suit her. She's quite tall, with what fashion magazines would call a difficult figure. Eleanor's mouth twisted slightly at the euphemism. I wondered if you might consider creating something for her, something that would make her feel celebrated rather than accommodated. The request represented a significant shift in Eleanor's thinking from dismissing my work as rustic to seeking it out for someone she cared about. I'd be happy to meet with your sister, I said. We could discuss her needs and preferences, design something specifically for her. She doesn't know I'm here, Eleanor admitted. Margaret is quite proud, and she's resigned herself to never looking the way she'd like to. I thought perhaps a gift certificate, something that would allow her to experience Threadwork without feeling that I'm criticizing her appearance. We can arrange that, I assured her. Maya can help you select an appropriate package before you leave. Eleanor nodded but made no move to stand. There's something else, she said after a moment. An apology for my behavior at Amanda's wedding, for dismissing your work without understanding its value, for contributing to the rift between you and your daughter. Thank you, Eleanor. That means a great deal. Amanda speaks very highly of you now, she added, of your business acumen as well as your artistry. She's quite proud of what you've accomplished. The words warmed me unexpectedly. Despite our tentative reconciliation, Amanda had never explicitly expressed pride in Threadwork, maintaining a careful separation between personal feelings and professional assessment. After Eleanor left, clutching a tastefully designed gift certificate and a promise of discretion regarding her sister's consultation, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year, from rejection to reinvention, from isolation to community, from invisibility to impact. Each step had been both painful and necessary, like pulling apart a poorly constructed seam before rebuilding it with stronger stitches. Threadwork celebrated its first anniversary in May with a gala event that transformed our Portland location into a showcase of achievement. Dress forms displayed our most iconic pieces. Photographs documented our growth from dining room startup to nationally recognized brand. And a special installation honored the original wedding dress that had started everything. Clients, supporters, and team members mingled with fashion journalists and local celebrities, creating a vibrant celebration of what we'd built together. Maya had arranged for a photographer to capture the evening, ensuring that this milestone would be properly documented for both business archives and personal memory. Speech, someone called as the evening reached its peak, and others took up the cry until I found myself standing before the assembled crowd, unprepared but filled with emotion. "A year ago," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I was a retired English teacher with a sewing hobby and a broken heart. Today, I stand before you as the co-founder of Threadwork, surrounded by extraordinary women who've joined me in reimagining what fashion can be when it serves rather than subjugates the female body." Applause rippled through the room, warm and encouraging. "We've created something remarkable here, not just a business, but a community. A place where women of all ages, shapes, and backgrounds can find clothes that honor their stories rather than attempting to rewrite them. Where craftsmanship isn't a luxury but a birthright. Where the hands that create are valued as highly as the bodies that wear." I scanned the crowd, seeing familiar faces beaming with shared pride. Maya, radiant in a jumpsuit she'd designed herself. Maria and Judith, our first seamstresses, now managers of their own departments, clients who'd become friends and supporters who'd become believers. And there, near the back, standing slightly apart but undeniably present, Amanda. Not in her usual corporate attire, but wearing a threadwork blouse I'd designed specifically for her, a peace offering she'd accepted with surprising grace. "They say success is the best revenge," I continued, holding my daughter's gaze. "But I've discovered that success isn't about revenge at all. It's about recognition, recognizing your own worth when others don't, recognizing talent in unexpected places, recognizing that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." I raised my glass. "To Threadwork, to second acts and new beginnings, to every woman who's ever been told she's too old, too much, too different to matter. Your story deserves to be honored. One stitch at a time." The room erupted in cheers and applause, the energy electric with shared purpose and celebration. As the crowd broke into smaller conversations, Amanda made her way toward me, moving with the careful determination of someone crossing uncertain territory. "That was a beautiful speech, Mom," she said when she reached me. "Thank you. I'm glad you could come." She touched the sleeve of her blouse, fingers tracing the subtle pattern I'd embroidered along the cuff. "This is the most comfortable thing I've ever worn, and somehow also the most elegant." "That's the Threadwork philosophy." I smiled. "Oh. Comfort and elegance aren't opposing forces. Neither are age and relevance, tradition and innovation. Mothers and daughters." Amanda's eyes met mine, holding steady for perhaps the first time since our confrontation months earlier. "I'm beginning to understand that," she said. "It's taken me longer than it should have, but I'm learning." "Learning is what matters," I told her. "At any age." The evening continued around us, a swirl of congratulations and conversations, but for that moment, standing with my daughter in the business I'd built from her rejection, I felt a quiet completion. Not an ending our relationship would continue to evolve, as would Threadwork itself, but a recognition that sometimes the most beautiful creations emerge from what first appears to be failure. That evening, I sat in my studio apartment above the shop. We'd converted the space when the lease on my suburban house expired, deciding that living above our work suited me better than maintaining the pretense of separation between art and life. The walls were covered with sketches and photographs, bolts of fabric organized by color and weight, and a single framed image, Sophia in my wedding dress, radiant with joy. My phone buzzed with a text from Naomi Wilson. Documentary nominated for Industry Award. Filming follow-up this summer. Threadwork story continues to inspire. Outside my window, Portland's spring night sparkled with lights from other people's windows. Other people's dreams being lived out in small acts of daily courage. Inside, surrounded by the tools of my craft and evidence of a life reimagined, I felt a profound contentment. In the morning, I would begin work on a special commission, a mother of the bride dress for a woman who'd chosen threadwork specifically because she'd heard the story of the dress that launched a revolution. She wanted something that honored both tradition and transformation, something that would make her feel beautiful while telling the world she was nobody's compromise. I knew exactly what to create for her. After all, I'd been practicing that particular pattern my entire life. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below and let me know the city you're watching from. Don't forget to check out 2 other stories that are channel favorites. My daughter told everyone I was dead. Then I showed up at her wedding. And I bought back my childhood home to find a locked room in the basement.